Like the body knows already what is wanted and what is needed. And when we are able to stand back, we can be surprised by what arises. And then the mind noticing what's happening and immediately having an opinion about it and getting in the way. That share was a perfect demonstration of what we're doing moment to moment. That there is just this habit of needing to control at all points what's going on, and an inherent mistrust about what arises naturally. And so we live in a state of poverty, emotional and somatic and even spiritual poverty. Because every time that abundance comes forth, our habit is to quash it. And then view life with a lens of scarcity. Because the more we quash it, the less spontaneous it arises. Until there is a space of safety. And then it rushes back forward because it wants to happen. It wants to be seen. It wants to be expressed. And there's no shame whatsoever in what our reaction is to that. Because even the controlling, even if it has a negative impact at times, in other times, it gives us the sense of safety. So even the habit of wanting to be in charge and know and direct is in service of our safety. It's just misattuned. It's a near miss. It gives a false sense of safety. And in the long term, it actually takes away our opportunities to feel authentically safe with anything that arises. And so, how can we let go of this habit or compulsion to jump in? And ironically, it's not by repressing the habit. It's not by, again, controlling. We don't use the control to control the control. We're just doing the same thing. It's looking like it's something else, which is kind of what we do. How we meet this is just by watching. And the more we see it, the more it becomes clear that one, there's this other possibility, there's this other phenomena that could happen. And there's this behavioral conditioning that we innocently have acquired. And that innocent condition that we have might not be serving us anymore. And there is just this understanding, there's just this realization. And it's in the realization, it's in having that insight that the bonds to that habit are broken. Not by controlling, not by repressing. What would our day be like if we actually followed these impulses? Maybe we can make that shorter, not a day, because that's a long time. What would the next moment be like if I just follow the impulse of what I really want? And I give myself over to it. There's a risk in that. And the risk is that when you follow that impulse, we don't know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And when we don't know what's going to happen, it feels unsafe. This is why the mind keeps jumping into control. But on the flip side of that risk, we can be surprised. And so what we're doing is we're navigating uncertainty. Right? We keep coming back to this, right? It's always said, how do we navigate the next moment? And we just watch. We just listen. And that same thing that bubbled up to spontaneously want to move in a particular way or feel something, that if we wait long enough, will arise back.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have to do anything, really, outside of maybe having an intention of not giving into the compulsion of when we feel that we want to interfere. Right? And it's hard.
That's hard.
It's really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And at the same time, it's like if we give into that compulsion, the automatic default is to shame ourselves. Oh, I did it again. I interfered. Oh, I've been doing this for so long. I've been taking these classes. It doesn't matter how long I've been practicing this. I keep doing it. Right. So then there's a layer of shame in that. And we just pile things up again, right? That's just another habit, right? Just pile things up. But in mindfulness, what we do is we notice the compulsion. And even if we act it out, then we feel the impact. And it feels a particular way. And it's really interesting, actually, because the impact of something that was born out of conditioning tastes and feels very different than the action that was born out of true nature. I'm going to use that word, meaning whatever the organism or our ecology here decides is appropriate in the moment, or the action that is born out of presence has a very different flavor. And we know that. Mm-hmm. We have the ability to sense and discern that. It's not subtle. And that feeling, for lack of words, I'm getting into more abstract territory, I like to just call it like the feeling of alignment. Mm-hmm. Like it's like the key fits perfectly in that shape. And all of a sudden, when there is that connection, there's a sense of vividness, and there's a felt sense that comes along with that. And so we taste that, and that becomes a reference point. So it doesn't matter if we are operating out of habit and conditioning. There's no shame in that. We absorb and taste and let the body integrate that. Or if we are in a place where true nature is moving us through our experience, we also notice and taste that. That's our involvement. It's not passive. It's also not active. Mm-hmm. It's somewhere in between. That is mindfulness. Mm-hmm. Mindfulness is the state. It's a state that we can be in, where we are intimately a part of our own true nature. And able to witness what is happening in a balanced state of mind, without adding more things to it, without making a story about what's happening to it. we're witnessing it, not clinically, we're witnessing it almost lovingly
Mm-hmm.
as, wow, this is being human. There's a tenderness, there's a compassion, there's a curiosity, a playfulness. And this place in between passive and active is absolutely restful and also nourishing.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you hear, that mindfulness will calm or will soothe. That's also been a little bit misinterpreted through the media. This is what we mean, is there's just this restfulness or this nourishment of being in this state, which can even hold very uncomfortable emotional experiences. That I can be in deep sadness and yet so connected, the organism so feeling it without pulling back or trying to change it, really making contact with the exquisiteness of what it's like to feel the emotion of sadness and the sacredness of the message that is telling us that there is something that is happening that is generating this grief. And that we view that and we relate to that as our true nature trying to communicate that something that really mattered to us is lost.
Mm.
Or even if it is anxiety that we're feeling and it feels so uncomfortable and unbearable, that if we can make contact with that energy and just let the body discharge it on its own, because it will, without adding shame or blame or that idea that there's something wrong and I need to fix it, and just once again opening up and honoring that as information, that my nervous system is so overly charged with so many different things that are happening that I just don't think I can handle it. And it's the surrendering and the acknowledgement of like, I can't do this. I don't know what to do. That brings the connection to the severity of the situation we've gotten ourselves in. Not that there's something wrong with us, that's a distracting story, but that things are happening in my life that are too much for my organism to be able to handle. And it's crying out for acknowledgement so that I can tend to it with care and
Mm-hmm.
relieve it of so many pressures. I'm not a victim, I'm empowered with that information. I'm not lost, I'm found. I found where my boundary is of what I can take and what I can't take. And that's an important boundary to know. And it's important to know that we are vulnerable and that we're fallible.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, we're built in with the mechanisms to show us that so that we can make choices that lead to our well-being. And that's resilience. It's not being able to do everything. It's about being able to recognize what's harmful and pull away and set healthy boundaries. And so the state can hold anything, even the things that we think are unbearable.
Mm-hmm.
It offers us the resources that we keep grappling to find in the external world. We have those resources inside. Our lineage has survived for millions of years. You are descendant of a long lineage of humans that have gone through so many different, difficult, challenging experiences. so that we can be here right now. We have what we need. We've just forgotten. Feedback of feeling hypersensitive is your true nature attuning to something that resonates deeply within. This signal is how we know. The word that comes to mind when I think of mindfulness is the word attunement. I am attuning to what's happening through my senses. But it's not sensorial only. It's not just physical. There's an emotional response also. And these aren't separate categories. There's the physical and there's the emotional. It's combined as an energetic state, again, for lack of a better word. Or sometimes I just call it the felt sense. There's just this field of perception that we embody. And as we start to attune to that felt sense, it becomes the compass in which we use to navigate. We don't need to know. We just attune. There's this myth in the culture that we live in that we need to know what we're doing.
Right.
And it's tied into also strength and respect. So there's a bias in defaulting to wanting to project this image that we know what we're doing at all times. And if we don't, we're unreliable or incompetent. And so we have less value as a human. And if we're going to be really honest, it's impossible to know what we're doing at all times. Actually, moment to moment, if we were to look really closely, how could we know what we're doing? Because each moment is changing. And most of what's happening in each moment, we're not even aware of. So how can we say that we know what we're doing? However, we don't need to know what we're doing because our true nature does. It has the ability to sense moment to moment its environment and the impact of the environment on our selves, on our systems. And oftentimes it will react before we even know it's reacted. So how do we navigate? Is we navigate with an openness to what's happening without narrowing it down by having a story about what's actually happening. Without using precious resources, defending a story, and projecting that I know what I'm doing. And instead, using the energy to sustain the self-image towards perceiving. And then whatever we need to know, which is just the next step, will bubble up. We can't know 10 steps ahead. We can guess. We might get it right, but what we can know is the next step. And that's relatively simple because there's only three possibilities. I either do something, or I reject, or I don't do it, or I just wait. That's it. Those are your three options.
Mhm.
That's manageable. That we can do. If we can break anything into bite size, anything is manageable. And then the system feels less overwhelmed because we're not demanding that it's able to know the answer to something that has so many different variables that are outside of my control. And the understanding of that is what offers safety. I can see clearly that there is no such thing as me being able to be in control of everything. And that the hypervigilance and the continuous directing and making things be in a particular way is exhausting and strips me of the resources that could be offered back as awareness.
Yeah.
And so it's like the setup is that I'm blindly walking through a fog, feeling like I need to know where I'm going to come out on the other end, versus just focusing on taking the next step and feeling if that is stable ground or not to be standing on.